state your name for the record?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Valerie Cisneros.
And Officer Cisneros, tell us what you do for a living.
I work for the Houston Police Department, Major Offenders Division, Career Criminal Squad.
How long have you been with the Major Offenders Division?
A little over 7 years.
You can back away just a little bit. Okay.
And how long have you been with the Houston Police Department?
This August it'll be 27 years.
As part of the Major Offenders Division with the Houston Police Department, is it common for you all to do undercover or covert investigations?
Yes, ma'am, our squad does.
Is that common for y'all?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you asked to do an investigation on a target by the name of Leon Jacob?
Yes, ma'am, we were.
And do you recall about when you were called in to participate in that investigation?
Yes, ma'am, I believe it was the 24th of, trying to remember. Can I check my notes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am, it was the 24th of, 24th of February.
Is that 2017?
Yes, ma'am.
At the time, who was the sergeant over the Major Offenders Division?
That was Sergeant Frank Quinn.
And what's his role as the sergeant of you all?
He's in control of our unit, our squad, oversees all our actions.
And so back when you all are called in to participate in this investigation, is Sergeant Quinn the one that's kind of in charge of things?
Yes, ma'am, he was.
Is it fair to say he's overseeing the investigation and how it unfolds?
Fully.
What is your first involvement with this investigation? What's the first thing that you do?
I came in a few weeks after he was approached by Harris County Special Crimes Bureau Major Offenders Division.
And when you say he was approached, are you talking about Sergeant Quinn was approached?
Yes, ma'am.
So Sergeant Quinn was approached by our office, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And an effort to help conduct this investigation.
Yes, ma'am.
Question on Bordar.
I'm so sorry, Bob.
I'd like to ask a question on Bordar.
You may.
Sir, when Sergeant Quinn, is it Sergeant Quinn?
Yes.
All right, when he was approached by the Harris County District Attorney's Office, were you present at that time?
No, sir.
That was before your involvement, correct?
Yes, sir.
So anything that you relate about Quinn's interaction with the District Attorney's Office before you're present would be basically hearsay to you?
Yes, sir.
No, we'd object to any testimony on the part of this officer about any type of actions and or conversations that existed between the District Attorney's Office and Sergeant Quinn prior to this individual's person.
Unless he has personal knowledge, I sustain the objection.
We're not going to go into any of the conversations, Judge, just to give context to the fact on how he became involved in the case.
Well, I don't mind you laying a predicate, but as far as conversations had, this witness is not available to testify to communications. You can set the stage, but that's about
Yes,
it.
Judge, we don't intend to go into any of that.
All right, thank you.
All right, officer, so at some point, do you become involved with Sergeant Quinn in this investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
And what's your first thing that you do on the investigation?
We meet up with the cooperating witness, Aziz.
And do you take a statement from him?
No, I do not.
Okay. Who talks with him at that point? Do you know?
He's in direct contact with our UC, Javier Duran,
Okay.
and Sergeant Quinn.
So you weren't privy to that conversation, correct?
No, ma'am.
All right. What is the next thing that you do?
Well, we prepare a plan on how to proceed with the undercover operation.
Now, a second ago, you referred to your UC. What's a UC?
It's an undercover police officer.
So was Officer Duran, was he the undercover officer participating in this investigation?
Yes, ma'am. He's the one that we selected.
And does it depend on the type of investigation or what you all are doing as to who from your squad might be the one that's going undercover?
Yes, ma'am. Sometimes one of the officers in our squad might fit better, either, physical appearance, race, language. So it just depends on what fits best.
So we've established that some officers met with Zach and the undercover. What did you do next?
Well, we're monitoring the plans which we put into place. After that, what we're doing is we're contacting the complainants and advising them of the situation.
So let's take a step back. Before you talk to the complainants, were you involved in the undercover operation at the Olive Garden?
Yes, ma'am. I conducted surveillance on the outside of the. I was not on the inside, but I was outside surveillance. Yes, ma'am.
And when you say outside surveillance, does that just mean you're watching from the outside in the parking lot?
Yes, ma'am.
And from that point, are you able to see people as they come and go from the Olive Garden?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that the extent of your involvement at the Olive Garden?
Yes, ma'am.
Going forward, you mentioned that you notify the complainants about what's going on.
Yes, ma'am. Sergeant Quinn and I did.
Without saying what they told you, did you notify a Megan Veracast about what was going on?
No, ma'am. That was Sergeant Quinn.
And was Mac McDaniel also notified?
Yes, ma'am.
And who did that?
Sergeant Quinn and I.
Okay. So Sergeant Quinn was involved in notifying Megan,
Yes, ma'am.
and you were involved with him in notifying Mac McDaniel.
That's correct.
When you notify a victim like Megan or like Mac, what's the purpose of doing that?
First of all, we're concerned about their safety. We don't know if there's any other plans in play.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said non-responsive to the question, Your Honor.
Repeat your question, please.
What's the purpose of notifying the complainants about what's going on?
Well, to prepare for the operation and for their safety.
Once you notify Megan about what's going on, do you take her somewhere?
I was not involved in Megan's situation. I believe she was taken somewhere for her safety as well. We instructed the complainant, Mr. McDaniel, to remain, either in the house or somewhere safe, out of the way.
And so this notification occurs after the meeting at the Olive Garden.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's fast forward then. Is there a meeting at a condominium complex here in Houston in Harris County named the Willowick?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your involvement over at the Willowick?
We're also conducting surveillance as well while the UC meets up with the suspects.
And does your undercover actually go inside the condominium to meet with the defendant in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to hear the conversation as it's unfolding between your UC and the defendant?
I couldn't monitor it. We have CID units monitoring that a lot more clearly than we did.
Once that occurs, does the undercover return from meeting with the defendant in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And at that point, do you all make a decision about giving a death notification?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, sir. Do you all make a decision about giving a death notification?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And describe for the members of the jury, when I say death notification, I know we know what I'm talking about, but give us a little context as to what you're going to do when you're going to give a death notification.
Well, what we do is we'll, in this situation, because, situations are different in different cases, but in this situation, we decided to appear at the apartment complex and notify them of the death.
And when you say notify them, who are you talking about?
Ms. McDaniel and Leon Jacob.
So at that point in the investigation, are you aware that the defendant in this case, along with Valerie McDaniel, believed that Matt McDaniel was actually dead?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at this point in the investigation, do you also know that the defendant and Valerie McDaniel know that Megan Veracast is dead?
Yes, ma'am.
So when you're going to give the death notification, is it for both individuals or just one of the two?
It's for both.
Who does the death notification in this case?
It was Sergeant Quinn.
Where are you during that?
Behind the camera.
Okay. So you're not involved in doing the death notification?
No.
At some point, do you know that Sergeant Quinn does a death notification that night?
Yes, ma'am.
And after doing that death notification, do things fast forward and do you all end up placing the defendant and Valerie McDaniel under arrest?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
Do do you do a search of the condominium with other officers that were assigned to major offenders?
Yes, ma'am.
And as part of the search, do you locate a cell phone belonging to the defendant, Leon Jacob?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know that the cell phone belonged to Leon Jacob?
We did not know it at the time.
Okay. Did the defendant ever tell you that he had a cell phone in the apartment?
Yes, he did.
And did he direct you to where he thought that cell phone might be?
There was several cell phones.
Okay. I'm going to talk his personal cell phone
Oh.
that you located. Let's talk about that one. Did the defendant direct you to where it was located inside the condo?
Oh, yes, ma'am. He said it was his bedroom.
And did you retrieve that?
Yes, ma'am.
Once you obtained those cell phones, did you take those somewhere?
Yes, ma'am. We took the cell phones to the HPD property room.
And once you got to the Houston Police Department property room, who was there?
We transferred chain of custody over to Jimmy Turpin, Lieutenant Jimmy Turpin.
And is Lieutenant Turpin, do you know who he's employed by?
He's employed by the Harris County District Attorney's Office, Special Crimes Bureau, Major Offenders Division.
So did you in fact give those to him, and then is it your understanding that he checked them into the property room?
Yes, ma'am. He tagged it into the Harris County property room.
Judge, I pass the witness.
Joseph, yeah. A few questions for you on cross-examination. You testified a number of times, I think.
A few.
Yeah. Officer, you were outside, you were in an automobile, correct?
During which time, sir?
Yeah, I'm sorry, at the house where, when the officers went in.
During the undercover operation or the arrest? Undercover. Yes, sir. I was outside.
All right, and that's when the telephones were retrieved from the possession of Leon Jacob, correct?
No, sir.
All right, that was during the second time?
Yes, sir. When we conducted the arrest.
All right, now, I think you said that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Leon Jacob directed you to where the cell phone was located.
His personal cell phone. His personal cell phone.
Right.
He had asked us to retrieve it from his bedroom.
Take that phone, and just straight up. Okay, go ahead.
So he directed you to where his personal cell phone was located,
Yes, sir.
and he permitted you to retrieve that, correct?
Yes, sir.
When he ended up being arrested, were you part of the arrest itself?
Yes, sir. I was in the apartment.
All right. Did he appear to be shocked and surprised that he was being arrested?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that you could hear more clearly. Pardon me. Another officer could hear more clearly than you the conversation had at the time of the arrest.
We have units that are monitoring with a higher frequency equipment.
And that's not your unit?
No, sir.
All right. I recall during your direct testimony that you looked at some notes that you had.
Yes, sir.
And may I take a look at those? Sure. Officer, I noticed that a man by the name of Kubash was the first individual that made contact with law enforcement about a particular situation involving Leon Jacob.
Yes, sir.
And you understand Mr. Kubash is a bail bondsman.
Yes, sir.
And did he tell you that Leon Jacob and that Megan wanted to go to Pittsburgh?
I was not involved in that conversation, sir, no.
All right. Take a look at your notes, which are extensive, and tell the ladies and gentlemen of this jury if your notes reflect anything about a conversation with Mr. Kubash?
Yes, it does. Not with me, I'm sorry. Not with me, sorry.
All right, that's all right. That's not my question. My question is, does your phone reflect any conversations that in fact had been conversations between Mr. Kubash and, for instance, the undercover officer?
Yeah, with the undercover officer?
Well, no, the first person Kubash and who was Kubash in contact with?
My timeline and my court notes reflect a conversation between Harris County Special Crimes Bureau and Mr. Kubash.
You say your notes do or do not?
They reflect a conversation between an investigator between that is from Special Crimes Bureau. Yes, sir.
All right. Do they reflect any content of that conversation?
Yes, sir. Some.
Sir?
Yes, sir.
And again, is there anything in the content of the conversation reflective of Mr. Kubash making a comment that Leon Jacob and Megan, or Megan, the complainant in this case, was going to Pittsburgh?
Judge, I'm going to object. This calls for the witness to testify to hearsay.
Well, if I may, if it's part of his investigation and he's got the content of that conversation on...
It's still hearsay, Mr. Warner.
Pardon?
If he's made notes about what somebody said, it's still hearsay if he's testifying. So I sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Let me phrase it in this fashion. Is there anything in the content of your notes that reflect anything about Pittsburgh?
Which again, I'm going to object. This calls for hearsay.
Well, he's got the notes, Your Honor, and if those are his notes.
Well, they're his notes, but if it's notes from what somebody told him, it's still hearsay if he repeats
Well,
it.
then I'd like to ask him that basic question as to whether or not anybody told him about that. And he can certainly, it can be objected to, but I think it's important to establish this issue that I'm trying to establish as far as Pittsburgh is concerned. It's important, it's a key ingredient in this case.
And I'm going to continue to re-urge my objection that it's hearsay.
It is hearsay, and I sustain the objection.
I pass this witness. Thank you, sir.
Nothing further, Judge.
To be excused?
Yes, Judge.
Mr. Barnum, any objection to be excused?
No, I have no objection. He's on call.
He's on call. Thank you so much. You are excused.